Hey Reluctant Preppers, you could have been watching this video the moment it came out
by going to healingyourself.life and subscribing to our new sister channel, Healing Yourself. See you there.
Healingyourself.life provides information for awareness, educational, and support purposes only and does not diagnose or prescribe treatment for any medical condition. Viewers are encouraged to do their own due diligence and consult with their own medical caregivers before making personal treatment decisions.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. It's been some time since we've had this very experienced guest with us. Joel Salatin is co-founder of Polyface Farms in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. He's a widely sought-after author and lecturer. He's a permaculture expert about all kinds of topics on how you can do self-sufficient homesteading, farming, gardening. He teaches hundreds of interns at his teaching farm there at in the Shenandoah Valley. Joel, thanks for coming back and joining us again here on Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you, Donegan. It's great. It's an honor to be with you.
We wanted to address a topic with you, especially in the light of extreme weather conditions that have been facing many people trying to grow crops in the United States and around the world. When we talk in the past about the self-contained home or about backyard gardening or about growing food for your family on 0 acres and all kinds of topics that we've talked about, permaculture, etc., one of the things we really haven't talked about is how you can prepare for feeding your family if you may be facing extreme weather conditions and how you can reduce the risk of extreme weather ruining your plans and basically taking food off the table and taking food out of your baby's mouth and so on. And one particular aspect of that, which we want to touch on, is the idea I would call fire or ice. It's like, which are we preparing for? Are we preparing to do self-sufficient gardening in the face of global warming? Or are we preparing to do self-sufficient gardening in the face of a grand solar minimum new ice age that's coming towards us, or severe flooding or whatever? So if you could kind of restart our examination of self-sufficient food production on a family scale, given the possibility of severe weather of various types, what can we do to make that more successful for ourselves so we can prepare the right way?
Yeah, well, it's certainly that's a great intro to a very, very big topic.
Okay.
So let's just start in, and I think we'll just progress through numerous points here just naturally as we go. For one thing, you can't grow anything without water, and so getting water under control is a big deal, both for flood and drought. I mean, if you have flooding, you want to be able to to not be inundated, to catch as much water as possible. And if you have drought, you want to have caught water. I think what's happening now, some of these extreme weather situations, and I just don't know. I think part is that we're so urbanized that we're simply not as resilient as we used to be when we were either more nomadic or lived lighter on the land. And so here we are. So water's a biggie. And so I'm a huge proponent of everything from rain barrels to big cisterns. I mean, if you go to Australia, even in the big cities, Sydney, Melbourne, every single house has a, 3,000 gallon cistern. I mean, they're massive big tanks, and many of them are, painted beautifully with murals. They have vines growing up over. I mean, these aren't, eyesores in the city, but every single house has them for emergency water. It's just ubiquitous in the culture. And so I think that here, if I were a small acreage or living in the city, for sure, I would want a large cistern. Large, I mean 3, 5, maybe 10,000 gallons. We actually built intern housing here on the farm, 5 or 6 years ago, and we have a 15,000 gallon cistern that gathers all of the water that comes off of the roof. And I mean, it really adds up. In our 30-inch rainfall, every square foot of roof gets 20 gallons of water a year in a 30-inch rainfall area. So that adds up. You have a 50 by 20 roof, 1,000 square feet, times 20 is 20,000 gallons. And one of the reasons that cisterns fail is because they're never big enough to handle a flood. They're not big enough to handle a torrential rain or event. And so, if some of the weather predictions are right, and we're seeing more weather extremes, anomalies, then we might see more droughts, but we're also going to see more rain events. So if you're in, think of the rain events that we've seen even in like New Mexico and Nevada, some of the very, very dry areas. I mean, some they're getting suddenly, a 2-inch downpour. Well, a 2-inch downpour on 1,000 square feet is a lot of water. And so I would simply start the discussion with what can we do to hold on to water, to collect water when we have it, so that we can meter it out gently when we don't. Now, if you have a larger acreage, if you're 2 to 3, maybe 4, 5, 6 acres, then certainly you can build a pond. And so you're going to, in our area, you can excavate roughly a gallon of water for less than 1 penny. I mean, if you start putting in a track loader and actually creating a pond, it's not very expensive per gallon to put that in. And then, of course, you have a riparian area. You have all sorts. You can grow fish. You can do all sorts of cool things in a pond. So that pond can collect roof runoff. It can be put in a natural valley where you have surface runoff during rain events. The problem generally is not that we don't get enough rain. The problem is that we don't keep the raindrops that fall on our land. And so if we really devote ourselves to holding the raindrops that fall on our land, you'd be surprised what you can do with them, especially with things like, a drip tape and, real conservative, a conservation-oriented water, irrigation system.
Drip irrigation.
It's pretty dramatic.
What you've just said has just blown my mind because it's so simple, but it's so brilliant. Because a lot of the panic and the dichotomy we hear about global warming, and then that got rebranded as climate change, and then they talk about these extremes like flash floods and severe flooding, but then you have droughts, and what we're talking about is extremes. And what you're describing in the face of preparing to handle and to ride out extremes is you provide a buffer system that allows you to have storage capacity. And my mind immediately leapt to passive solar, or where in the solar industry where they talk about solar energy, electric energy storage, because obviously solar power is cyclical. You don't get it in the daytime, you don't get it at nighttime, etc. But your demand is consistent. So it's really beneficial to store that up, and then also heat storage. Passive solar, if you have a heavy mass construction, such as Adobe or whatever, it allows you to moderate these extremes of the cold of the desert night and the blazing heat of the day by moderating it with using mass. So it's so simple but so brilliant to just use. What you're describing here is storage to buffer out those extremes. Okay, yeah, I'm following you. This is very helpful.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you could certainly put a pipe grid in that pond to capture the natural mass, hot-cold mass amelioration qualities of water. So that's an advantage too. But okay, so we're gonna take advantage. We're gonna deal with a resilient system with water. I mean, I think that's number one, because you can't have any life without water. Now, this pond, if we're going to build a pond, for example, this can be anything from as elaborate as a 100-foot diameter to something that you just do with a backhoe. and and you carve it out with a backhoe that's maybe the size of a swimming pool. But even a moderate-sized swimming pool, is going to hold 20,000, 25,000 gallons. So that goes a long way if you're putting that on plants strategically. All right, so we got water or feeding livestock, watering livestock. All right, then I think the next big thing is getting the soil in a shape where it is most resilient. So we're not going to grow in a floodplain. We're not going to put our garden down where there's going to be a flood. We're going to get it up on high ground, which of course, tends to be drouthy. So we need organic matter. And so stockpiling carbon. This can be something you can just make a pile. You can. We have an entire carbon shed. The thing is, the thing holds 25 tractor trailer loads of carbon. But that's part of our whole fertility soil resiliency, because it's carbon in the soil that holds water, that feeds the soil, the earthworms, the biota, the actinomycetes, the mycelium. And so, we have storage sheds for lawnmowers and children's toys and those kind of things. What about having a storage shed for, and this doesn't have to have a floor in it, just on dirt, but a simple pole structure where you actually store carbon, and you put some simple sides around ours. We just cut some old pine poles and kind of, Western style corral type, and pine poles around as simple little sides, and that holds it in there and makes it nice and neat and aesthetically pleasing. And we can store carbon. And that way, if things go south, we've got this huge carbon store that we can continue to mulch the garden, feed the garden, make compost, those sorts of things. If you move soil 1% in organic matter, that is equivalent to, if you did it on an acre, that's equivalent to additional water retentive capacity of 20,000 gallons per acre. So on our farm, in 60 years, we've gone from 1% to 8% organic matter. That's 7 percentage points. 7 times 20 is 140. So that means on our farm, every acre now holds 140,000 gallons more water than it did 60 years ago. That's a lot of water. And so that not only can accept a torrential rain that's suddenly a rain event without, losing it all to runoff and flooding, but it also allows a slow release because it's that carbon, it's the spongy part of the soil that holds it in that. Think about, natural vermiculite, and it actually holds that water in the glomalin and in the aggregates of the soil to keep the roots moist. Paul Gauci, who wrote Back to Eden, the book Back to Eden, recommends 12 inches of wood chips on your garden, and this is his whole recipe for everything. And he's in the dry part of Oregon. He never has to irrigate, never has to worry about flooding, never has to worry about any of this stuff, because he's got this deep carbon blanket on the soil. And so developing a program to sustain, regenerate, and continually build resilient soil is another, I think, extreme aspect. The beauty of mulch in a garden situation, the beauty of mulch is if it's hot, it cools the soil. If it's cold, it acts as a blanket and keeps the soil from getting too cold. I mean, you can, for example, you can grow carrots. You can grow carrots in the fall and cover them up with 12 inches of leaves or wood chips, even in certainly here in Virginia, but even in the north, even in very cold areas, you put 12 inches of wood chips on top of those carrots going into winter, and you can dig them right on through. It'll never freeze under there because because all that mulch on top keeps the soil from ever freezing. And so you can just create a real simple root cellar, if you will, an on-site root cellar by putting your mulch on. So I'm a big advocate of carbon. Start developing relationships, start stockpiling, and create your carbon pile. It'll be worth way more than money.
So when you mow people mow their lawn and they sometimes want to haul away or bag and get rid of their grass clippings, you're saying don't get rid of that stuff if it's got any.
Absolutely, use your lawn as a fertilizer feeder for your garden soil. Man, if you've got organic matter, leaves, grass, kitchen scraps, anything, if you've got organic matter, don't ever let it leave your sight. You be a hoarder of organic matter and go to the neighbors, get their leaves, and just make sure that you are stockpiling and saving all that organic matter.
For people who live in a place where the soil is extremely poor, it's just bare, horrible clay. We've heard that if you make compost tea, you can raise things even in the poorest of soils. Have you experienced that, or what is your recommendation around it? You talk about building the soil, and that's all good, but if you're starting with just terrible soil, can you get started?
Well, I'll tell you, the one nice thing is that soil can heal very, very rapidly, and so I guess my response to that is anybody who is so sophisticated that they can make compost tea to apply as foliar can, in less time, build compost and get that soil right in the first place. I don't dislike compost tea. I will just tell you it's very, very sophisticated, and if you get the bugs wrong or you get the recipe wrong, you can actually do a lot of damage. And so it's a lot more sophisticated than just simple decomposition. So look, if you go out there, if you've got terrible soil, poor hard-packed soil, if you go out there and you put 12 inches of leaves or wood chips on it today, 365 days from now, even if you're in Arizona or Las Vegas, you will have nice soil 365 days from now. I can. That's a money-back warranty on my part.
They get back all the money they paid for that advice. Okay.
Yeah, and if you've got a lawn and you want to make garden, just get a bunch of cardboard, lay down a bunch of cardboard, in beds. I recommend something 3 or 4 feet wide, 12 feet long, maybe. Make just simple beds. Lay your cardboard down first, and then pile 12 inches of wood chips on top of it. Let it sit for 1 year, and you will have beautiful, beautiful garden plots and soil. You don't have to spade it. You don't have to turn it. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is be patient. And what I'm saying is, in the amount of time it takes to become proficient enough to make compost tea that actually works for you, you can do what I'm suggesting, and it's not fragile and it's not sophisticated. It just takes a little bit of elbow grease and planning, and you're up and running.
Okay, so you've got us with a buffer for storing water, capturing and having a good relationship with our raindrops, where we keep them around it so we can use them later. We're building up a resilient, carbon-rich soil by making this 12-inch blanket of wood chips and so on. And what's next?
Yeah, I would say what's next is just a diverse. What do you eat? One of the biggest crises when there's extremes of things is people are thrown off their routine. We like routine. We like routine. Few things define a household as much as favorite dinner dishes. The kind of things you like to eat. And so, what do you like to eat? All right, well, grow that, and just begin growing it. And of course, I recommend. I recommend a diversity for sure. You want a diversity, but don't go into these some of these survivalist things and grow odd stuff, because as if the trauma of your extreme situation isn't enough, the trauma of, oh my goodness, now how am I supposed to eat this? That just adds to your trauma. So if you like beets, if you like potatoes, if you like green beans, whatever, grow what's common, grow what you like to eat, and grow a diversity of it, and begin preserving it, whether that's dehydrating, canning. The most resilient is dehydration and canning. Freezing, of course, is wonderful, but if the power's out because there's a flood or ice storm or something like that, then that becomes problematic. So I'm a big believer in in canned and dehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
That was and of course cured. And when it comes to meat, you can cure it, and you can can meat. I mean, we've canned venison, chicken, beef, cans. You can can vegetable soup. You can pre-make vegetable soup and can it. And so the main thing about canning meat is don't fill the jar too full, because the oils will come up when it cans and make a slick. It'll keep the rubber from adhering to the jar lid. So leave yourself a good inch of headspace there, so the oils don't go up and get on the ring when it's
Mm-hmm.
being heated. So yeah, I mean, start closing. Think about closing your loops. So kitchen scraps can go to chickens, and I mean, chickens can pretty much live off of kitchen scraps, especially if there's meat in them, and they'll lay your eggs, and you're up and running. I mean, I'm a big fan of chickens. I think they're probably the most utilitarian homestead animal there is. They're a lot easier to care for than a cow, and again, depending on your size of your homestead, if you're in a suburban city setting with a 1/4 acre yard, you're not going to have a cow, you're not going to have a goat or a sheep, but a chicken or a rabbit can be just fine. So when you're designing structures, housing structures for these things, we're going to prepare for heat or cold. So you want things that you can use year round in all types of weather, all types. So things that you can canvas that you can roll up when it's hot, roll down when it's cold. You can use clothespins and bungee cords to secure it down low, roll it up high. So you're looking at all weather type of structures that are easily applicable, hot or cold. Greenhouses. You always want a greenhouse with a side that can roll up, or you can put shade cloth on it. In the heat. But roll up sides so you can let air go through, or you can roll it down and it's really, really tight. Those allow you to do extremes. Another permutation of this theme, of course, is season extension. Whether it's cold frames and certainly earth sheltered cold frames are fabulous. One of the reasons to have animals on your homestead is the magic of manure. There's just nothing like manure. So if you've got your carbon storage and you've got manure, now you have exactly the perfect recipe for composting. You can, cold frames, earth sheltered cold frames. You can put 12 inches of chips and manure in the bottom of that thing, and that gentle warmth will keep the thing cold. You can raise lettuce when it's below 0 Fahrenheit in a cold frame like that, especially if it's earth sheltered. Use earth heat. We have a solarium on the side of our house, and this is a retrofit. Our house was built in 1790. So you can go to old houses and put solariums on them, okay? And we have a pit we dug way down deep and have leaky pipe in there with gravel on it to act as a heat sink. So when the solarium is hot, you can actually, pump the hot air down in there, warm up the rocks, and at night let the rock temperature come up into the solarium and keep things warm. I saw a guy do this. I didn't invent the idea. I got the idea from a guy in Minneapolis who had converted. He'd put a solarium on the size of his garage in the city. He lived in the city, and he was producing enough leafy greens for, I think, 20. He was doing a CSA, and he had 20 shareholders from his garage-sized solarium with this, with this rock pit, with no supplemental heat,
earth-coupled heat pump, basically.
And he ran this CSA in from I think it was 1st of November until the 1st of March every year in Minneapolis. I mean, it was just fantastic. And so, these are things. So when you start looking at extreme weather, yes, you're wanting to be ready for hot or cold, and thermal mass, whether it's a bunch of black barrels against the wall like a trom wall, or earth, or using earth either cooling or heating under the earth. The earth stays the kind of same temperature down deep, or concrete mass, but water. You can put a big tank in there and grow fish, and the water acts as a heater. You can take the bottoms of cans and cut them and glue them to the edge of your water tank that has the fish in it, and paint them black, for example, and that acts as a huge radiator to take your water mass and radiate it out through your little can, all your little, all these little can bottoms act as little radiators, like a car radiator, little fins. They act as little metal fins to help, get you a lot more surface area, because you can heat the water very, very cheaply. I mean, if you've got a wood stove or something, you can heat that water very, very cheaply. What's hard to heat and control is air, because air is a very inefficient heat transfer. So if you heat the water and keep the water at a perfect temperature, and then you have all these little fins around your water tank to duct the air, then you're able to do it without fans and all that stuff to move air around. So these are just things that that you can do that are fairly passive, low tech, but that's all about design so that they kind of sustain themselves.
For most people who live in North America, who may be listening to this, some of them, if they live in the Southwest, it's generally deserty. In the Southeast, like where you are, the soil conditions would be a lot better, but you sometimes have to worry about flooding, even hurricanes. One thing we haven't talked about is other extreme weather other than just drought or heavy rains or cold or hot. We talked about those extremes. What about severe weather, such as hurricanes, tornadoes, things like that? Is there anything that makes a garden or a farm or anything less susceptible to getting wiped out that people can do in preparation for extreme weather?
Yeah, build your house underground. That's any kind of earth shelter, whether you like build into a bank, anything you can do to lower your building profile. So use a hill, and instead of building things on top of a hill, or build your house, build your shed, build your shop, build your solarium, build it into the edge of a hill. Obviously in North America, you'd always want stuff facing south, but you want to build it into the edge of a hill so you lower your profile. And if you can if you can get that profile down, you won't catch as much wind. We run these little chicken shelters, that are 2 feet tall, and we've tried some kind of hoop structure chicken shelters in the past, and we have one now, one of the big schooner types, just to try it out. And we have had more wind issues over the years. I mean, just with the hoop structures, because they have such a they're like a box kite when the wind comes. But our little boxes, they're flat topped, 2 feet tall, and those, even a very, very strong wind, those things just sit there down on the ground and don't move around. We had a heavy wind come through here 2 years ago. It blew the big, heavy, hoop structure that we moved with a tractor, blew it about 8 feet and skidded it over about 10 chickens and killed them. And right next to it in the same field were 10 of our little squatty field shelters. They never moved an inch. Nothing happened. Everything was fine. And so profile, when you think about catching wind, everything is about profile. And so for example, an A-frame of glass can handle way more wind than a hoop house. And we've got plenty of hoop houses, but we situate our hoop houses so they're protected. So locate them. Where do your winds come from? In North America, our winds tend to come from westerlies. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you can get them on the side of a hill, on the leeward side of a hill, where the wind's going up over, you stand a lot better chance. If you're going to set them right up on top of a hill, or down in a valley, a tunnel where the wind just whips through there as a tunnel, you're going to have a lot more trouble. So think about situation, orienting. We have all of our hoop houses oriented so they're parallel with the wind. The ones that you put sideways to the wind, they're going to catch way more wind. So set them east-west, where your prevailing winds come. And if you don't know, get a windsock, get a simple little something, and watch it for a week. See, note what direction does the wind blow most, and then situate your A-frame or your tall tunnel or whatever it is. Situate it so you're parallel to the way those winds run. That also means that in the summer, when it's real hot, we have natural airflow, so we don't have to use fans to go through the hoop houses. And so that orientation is really important. Now, if you're in real flat country, maybe you need to plant a little windbreak, on the windward side of your hoop houses. Get in there and get a screen of trees and some evergreens. And you say, oh, that's going to take years to grow. You can get some pretty fast-growing stuff now. Some especially some of these fast-growing conifers, even hybrid poplars, things like that. That'll grow pretty fast. In 5 years, you'll have something 12, 15 feet tall. So that's enough to actually do some good windbreaking for you, and maybe even you use your house as a windbreak. You put your house, and then you disconnect maybe 20 feet to your hoop house, but your house then is going to act. Think about the way the wind runs, and if you can get any kind of break, it's going to protect those vulnerable hoop houses. I mean, everybody in our movement loves hoop houses, right? Because they're cheap. You can build them real quick. They're semi-portable. If you need to move them, you can. There's a lot of reasons to love hoop houses, but they are vulnerable in extreme weather conditions, yes.
We were so impressed when we visited Bermuda, the island of Bermuda in the Atlantic Ocean. We've done it twice now in the last 2 summers, and because we were taking a tour around there, and the local tour guides who were on this bus with us pointed out that all the houses that we passed, they said, we get hurricanes here pretty often. They said, but we don't mind it. We don't have evacuation shelters and that sort of thing. She says the official plan is that everybody just hunkers down in their own house and shelters in place because the houses are made out of limestone and the roofs are made out of limestone and everybody has a cistern. So she says you just weather the storm, and afterwards you come out and your neighbors get together and they clean up any fallen trees together, and life gets back to normal. They don't have widespread destruction when hurricanes come through.
Well, there is something to be said for construction that's so simple it just blows apart, and then you can rebuild it.
So you can go either way with that one. You can go with something that's, in their case, they use massive, sturdy construction that can weather the storm, and you're saying something that's not difficult to reassemble afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, for example, one of the most extreme, wind things that we've had here. We've only had one tornado since I've been here. We never get full on hurricanes because we're too far inland, but we get, we've gotten pretty severe, water and rain. But the thing that really got us several years ago was a derecho. That's a straight wind, 80 to 100 mile an hour straight wind sustained for about 3 hours, and it's the only one that's ever happened. But boy, it was devastating in our area. Our area got the full brunt of it. It started up in Indiana and arrived here. For 2 hours sitting in her house, it sounded like a freight train was going through the house, and it literally picked up 20 of our field shelters, and just, I don't know where they went. We never found them. I mean, they just went who knows where, somewhere. But so the next morning, we went out, and here were the chickens. We did lose some chickens, but they were just kind of sitting there in the field, kind of bewildered. And we had a cowshade mobile that we ran in quick and just, put it for them, and they got under that. It was 100 degrees. It was incredibly hot. And people died in the area. Power was off for 14 days. It was really, really a devastating thing. But so we lost all these shelters, but guess what? We just turned to, and in about 4 days, we rebuilt 20 of them. Mm-hmm. Chickens were back in. We were up and running in 4 days. People that had these big Tyson chicken houses, not only did they lose all their birds, but those houses were a year being rebuilt. Mm. And so sometimes there is something to be said for stuff that's just so tinker toyish that it just kind of, like a NASCAR race car. They build them so that if you have a wreck, it all falls apart and takes the pressure of the wreck. It dissipates it as the car disintegrates, as opposed to being all held together.
Mm-hmm. That's been quite a series of ideas you've given us. We're going to include these in the notes underneath the video, so if people want, if they haven't been taking notes fast enough about water, soil, grow what you like to eat, closed loop systems such as chicken scraps to the kitchen scraps fed to the chickens, and then you talked about flexible weather structures that can adjust, roll up, roll down, solarium, season extension, manure, and ground-coupled heat mass, and wind resistant. You've covered a lot of different territory there that can help people adapt and be prepared for extremes of weather. Any other extremes of weather that come to mind that you've either had to make it through yourselves or have known others who have, that there would be good tips to add before we wrap up?
Well, I would just say that for us, again, the context is so different. If Florida gets 2 feet of snow, things are going to be different. But for us, I would say probably over the years here in Virginia, our most significant weather situations have been blizzards in the winter, so for that, a good stockpile of firewood, wood stove. If the power goes out and the electric company can't get here, or the fuel oil company can't get here, there's a lot to be said for a pantry in the basement that won't freeze because it's earth sheltered, and a wood stove that's either operable or in the wings that can be, and a generator. Maybe if we have an outdoor wood furnace, so a generator to run it. But fireplaces at least in the house with a wood thing. Those are all really basic hunker down times, and some of our most extreme weather, but some of our most enjoyable times have been in blizzards. Where you get 2 feet, 3 feet, and you're just stuck. You can't go to town. Roads are stuck. You can't do any work, and there is a real. So you bring the wood in, you start the fireplace, you roast marshmallows, you eat your canned goods, and life is good. So those make good memories, and you read a good book or play caroms and chess and whatever else you want to do. But those are some of our fondest memories, are some of these extreme weather situations where you are just in existence mode, and there's a certain a certain kind of wild DIY. There must be a DIY genome or something that is intoxicating when you have extreme situations that you have prepared and planned for and are able to weather with alacrity, compared to other people that are going crazy.
There's something sublime and peaceful about surrendering to the superior power of Mother Nature. When Mother Nature just takes over and says, I'm in charge now, you're not, and you're able to go, okay, that's okay. We'll just kind of lay low for a while here, and we still have our Maslow's needs met there, and we'll just quit trying to be in control, because obviously you're in control.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Well, Joel, this has been fascinating, and it's not at all like I thought it might be. I think we were able to sidestep any strident debates about what would you say, ideologies about it's going to go this way, no, it's going to go that way, no, you're crazy. It's just because it doesn't. In the end, are you resilient, and do you have adaptability to have some of this ability to weather is a good word for it, to weather these different extremes that may come your way. So it's been extremely helpful. And folks, if you have other suggestions that you'd like to add to these, go ahead and feel free to add those as comments below this video for the benefit of others. Joel, are there any of your books or writings or any publications that you subscribe to that you think people who want to find out more about these things would do well to look into?
Probably the one book that would speak to a lot of these is Folks, This Ain't Normal. And don't let the title scare you off. Folks, This Ain't Normal. It's essentially about how we modern Americans live that's not normal. And so the whole point of the book is to explain and express what has been normal throughout human civilization.
Right. Okay.
Because humans have been, fairly resilient, actually. And so what are those commonalities that have made resilient societies, resilient cultures throughout history? That is actually fairly normal. And I would just suggest that knowing no more than beer is on the refrigerator, NFL is on TV, and the Kardashians are in People magazine, that is not the civilizationally resilient, normal way to live.
So it's like reclaiming our birthright of normalcy and resilience. Okay. Yeah. Excellent.
That's right.
So, Joel, if people want to find you, they'll find you at polyfacefarms.com. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes.
Excellent. We've been speaking with Joel Salatin, author and farmer and teacher and lecturer. And Joel, just thank you, as always, for joining us here on Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, healingyourself.life viewers.
We need your help in enabling us to continue to create great health videos for you.
So please support our mission by going to patreon.com/healingyourself and pledging any monthly amount you can.
Your pledge will also help us to afford a new Lyme peptide treatment therapy to improve our memory, and we will report on our progress to benefit you and others.
So remember, go to patreon.com/healingyourself and pledge today.
Were you going to tell them to go to patreon.com/healingyourself to pledge to help our memory treatment?
I thought I did. I'll do it. So please go to patreon.com/healingyourself and pledge today.
Thanks. It seems so hard to order. Who can I trust, and how do I even start?
Oh, you just go to sdbullion.com/rp, pick out whatever gold or silver you want, add it to your cart, you can check out, and it's on its way. And they're A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau.
Wow, it's that easy?
Your first ounce of silver is at spot price, and you get free shipping on any order over $99 at sdbullion.com/rp. Hey, Reluctant Preppers. If you haven't heard, we've already started our monthly 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle thank you gift to one active Patreon subscriber each month, signed by your host, Dunnigan Kaiser. And you don't want to miss out on that.
Please help us grow by subscribing today at patreon.com/reluctantpreppers.